Welcome to this week's Today's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is Brett.
And I'm Ashley. The Today's Health and Wellness Podcast is a joint effort of the Central Ohio Health and Wellness Magazine and Today's Health.
In each week's podcast, we spotlight health and wellness stories you'll find in the magazine, on Today's Health web pages and social media, as well as extras you'll only hear in the weekly podcasts.
Thanks for subscribing and hitting the play button. Let's get started. Brett, you had the opportunity to talk with Michele Glauser at Capital Healthcare Network for the podcast. They offer a wide variety of services that includes physical, occupational, and speech therapy, as well as one of the region's best independent living villas and assisted living facilities.
You bet. You know, most people don't know that the patient can choose where to go to get their physical therapy done. Michele covers that and some great tips on how to talk to your mom and dad about when it's time to leave home and look at independent or assisted living. Let's get started. Well, Michele, thanks again for being a guest on our podcast. Really appreciate it. I wanted to go over some areas that I know you know very, very well with where you are with Capital Healthcare Network. And I love the vision statement you guys have, helping seniors age on their own terms. I think it's a great segue into talking about a couple of areas I wanted to cover with you. Number one, options for physical rehabilitation. As we've talked about in the past, it's always the patient's choice. But at the same time, there's some research to be done. Let's go over some ideas and how to approach that time.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having me as well. There are several options when it comes to therapy needs. Scioto Community offers physical, occupational, speech, as well as outpatient therapy. You can even pre-register for your stay with us. We have aqua therapy and even a driving simulator to help you get back on the road if needed. The great thing about Scioto Community is the continuum of care that we offer. Once your rehab is complete and you are discharged home, we can still offer you great care at home. Our home health division will provide you whatever you may need at home. But the most important thing to remember is that it is your choice where you go for post-acute care. When you are ready to be discharged from the hospital, you get to choose where you want to go. And a lot of people don't understand that it is their choice. They think whatever someone recommends, whether it's the doctor or the social worker at hospital, that's where they have to go. But that's not the case. It's totally your choice. When you're ready to be discharged from the hospital, all you have to do is let the social worker know where you want to go. And that's the great thing about our pre-registration program, because all of that can be done ahead of time and you don't even have to worry about it. But again, I think it's very confusing for a lot of families when they're not used to making this type of decision. They don't understand that it really is their choice, and it is.
And it's a good part where the physical rehabilitation, especially when it's your choice, you know you're going in for elective surgery.
Correct.
It's something,
yeah.
A hip needs to be replaced or whatever the case might be. It may not be an emergency situation, but you're planning it out. That's a great opportunity to do the research, know that you can pre-register. You know when your surgery is going to be, register that I'm going to be there afterwards. But you bring up a really good point about the follow-up care. I think that's a great question to ask about when you're doing your research. What happens when I'm discharged?
Right. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't understand that once the rehab stay is over, they're still going to need a little bit more rehab usually, but they can do that at home. And that's why using our home health network, once you discharge from the building, it's just so much easier because, again, there's that continuum of care and they know your past, they know what you've been doing, they know your history, and it really helps.
What are some really good questions, some research questions that a patient who has the time to be able to take a look at this, that they should be asking, looking online when they have you on the phone as well, some good 4 or 5 questions they should be asking?
Sure. And one thing I want to talk about is how different it is these days, because years ago, you'd look in the yellow pages, you'd pick a place to go. And now there's so many other resources. You can get online, you Google search, rehab, and so many different choices come up. So it's important to know the questions to ask. And some of the questions you want to ask when looking at a rehab facility is, what type of care do they offer? Is it going to be appropriate for me or for my family member? Is the facility certified by Medicaid and Medicare? What insurance do they accept? What's the average length of stay? And a lot of people don't think about visiting hours, but you should also ask about that, because some communities only want the families to visit at certain times. The other things you want to really pay close attention to are when you come into the building, how do you feel when you walk in there? Do they make you feel at home? It doesn't have to be the prettiest building. It has to be one that you feel like is a good fit for your family member or for yourself.
Sounds like a good idea. I know that a few times that I've met with you locally here in Columbus, I think the staff does a great job of making you feel welcome. And I think that's a really good point to, if you have the opportunity to visit the location, to be able to know where to drive,
right?
Relatives, friends taking you there to understand where you're going, but you know that you're going to have a smiling face when you walk in and know where you're going with it too. Makes sense.
And that's very important, because this is a scary time for people. Right. They don't know what to expect. And you want to feel safe and secure when you're in there.
Exactly. Another piece to this, especially with Capital Healthcare Network, is the independent living, assisted living. Sometimes the physical rehabilitation does lead into that. Otherwise, it can as well just be an independent choice, that it's time to downsize. It's time that you want to look at a continuing care, depending on health issues, family issues, and such like that. It's from A to Z questions, obviously, and different situations in life. What are a few steps to initially do some research on that? Why choose assisted living, independent living? I know there are two different categories, but they do kind of tend toward the same types of what's going on in your life at that time.
Sure. Well, for instance, the independent living that we have at Scioto Community are villas. It's a private gated condo community for folks that are 55 years and older. There's not a lot of extra services you get with independent living. It's more a safe, fun place for them to be, where there's activities and companionship, and they don't have to worry about yard work. They don't have to worry about maintenance, so they can just enjoy their retirement years. Now, when your family starts to need a little extra help, whether it's medication management or making sure that they have their meals, then you want to look at assisted living. And there's some questions as well to look at when you are looking at assisted living. What kind of activities do they have? What kind of services do they offer? Our particular assisted living offers 24-hour RN coverage, fine dining, assistance with different daily activities, including bathing, grooming, and dressing. And it's really tapered towards what the needs of that person is. Right. If you're coming to visit your mom and dad and you see that they're not taking their medication regularly, or that they may have missed a meal, or you don't even know the last time they had a meal,
right.
Those are flags that come up that you need to really look at possibly assisted living for them, because they're going to need reminders. Maybe they need transportation to their doctor's appointments, or even just the companionship of other people their age and activities for them to do as well.
What's some good advice that conversation between the siblings and mom and dad at that point, saying, Mom and Dad, it looks like we can't help you. We can't be here every day and such. That's got to be one of the most difficult conversations that kids will have with their mom and dad. What's some advice on how to approach that from a father, or I should say son-daughter approach, talking to mom and dad about it's time. We need to take a look at this.
That's one of the hardest conversations to have, because nobody wants to give up all of their independence. Correct. And they feel like, that's it. I'm done. I'm over with. When your parents were growing up, their views of what assisted living was, or nursing home care, was completely different.
Correct.
And they have a picture in their mind of what they're going to. That's it. It's the end for me. But it's not that case anymore. Now it's completely different. And sometimes it may be easier, instead of starting the conversation, just say, hey, we're going to go check this place out. Go for a tour, have lunch, meet other people, and have them see what's going on at the community first.
Okay.
And then sit down and have a conversation with them. Mom, I'm really worried because you're not taking your medications the way you're supposed to. Or Mom, I'm really worried because it looks like you haven't eaten in 24 hours.
Right.
just things like that. It's never going to be an easy conversation. And unfortunately, a lot of times people don't have that conversation and something tragic happens and then they don't have any choice. But if you can turn it in a way where they see that there's a lot of positives. It's not just because, I can't remember to take my medicine. It's let's have some companionship. Let's have security. Let's do things with other people my age. It really does make a difference.
Right. I would think patience has got to be a big piece of this. The conversation's not going to happen one time and decisions are going to be made. It's going to be over possibly months at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing with assisted living is it does take a lot longer because sometimes there may be a house to sell. There may be other options that you're looking at, and you want to make sure you have a good option. You don't want to wait until you have no choice. You've got 2 days to find a place for mom or dad. Right. You want to start having that conversation as soon as you see little signs, and don't wait until something happens.
Right. I think it's great advice because I wanted this interview to really look at helping the siblings with this process.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult for mom and dad, or mom solo, dad solo, to make that choice if they're selling the home that they were in for decades. It's a hard process, but I think that's great advice in regards to showing them the positives of moving rather than because we can't help you. It's this transition. We're looking forward to helping you enjoy another 20 years in a different place and socialize and such too.
Yeah,
so.
and a lot of communities will offer to have you come in for lunch so you can sit down, have a meal, meet some of the people, and that's a great way to slowly edge into it as well.
Right. That's another topic I wanted to cover with you. I think the dining issue is really, really important, and I think a lot of communities don't talk about that. And it has changed overall. I mean, it's the food prep and offering is not just a dietitian coming in. It's really good dining now, very tasteful, and an experience rather than just say, okay, it's time to eat, now go.
Right. Yeah. And food is very important. I mean, it's important to all of us. Right. We all like to have good food.
Exactly.
So who wants to go somewhere that they're not going to have good meals? Right. At Scioto Community and all through our Capital Health Network, we employ chefs. We don't have just dietitians. We have fine dining programs. It's restaurant-style dining. So every time they come down for a meal, it's like they're going out to a restaurant. And that's something that's fun. And we all, like I said, we all enjoy good food. Nobody wants to eat something that doesn't taste good or look good. Yeah. And that's important too.
It is. I think the whole category has become much more respectful for that age group than, like you said, your parents remembering what their mom and dad went through, going in the nursing home and stuff. It's just kind of, you felt like you're just shipping them off and nurses were going to take care of them. And the smell and the sounds that came through, it's not there.
Right.
It's just not the same thing. And I think all the things that are happening with activities and food such make a big, big difference.
Definitely.
What will be one or two takeaways that you'd want our listeners to really think about when looking at communities like yourself?
The most important thing, like I touched on before, is how you feel when you come into that community. Take your time and do your research. Don't just pick anywhere, but make sure it's a good fit, because not every community is going to be a good fit for everyone. Make sure that you, like I said, you feel at home when you come in there, and you feel that your family member is going to be taken care of the way you want them to be taken care of. Asking the right questions, doing your research, and spending time. Don't just do one tour, do a couple tours. Come in, have a meal, see what goes on. Look around and see what the other residents are doing. You want to make sure that they're active and they're doing things. So the main thing is make sure that you feel at home and you feel like it's a good fit.
Great. Thanks for being a guest. Appreciate
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for listening to this week's Today's Health and Wellness podcast, brought to you by Central Ohio Health and Wellness Magazine and Today's Health. If you have a health and wellness segment you would like us to cover, send us an email. Our contact information is in the show notes.
And if you'd like more information about sponsoring our podcast, like Ashley just mentioned, our contact information is in the podcast notes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Circle 270 Media Podcast Network.
This is Tracy from the Traveling Through the Middle Ages podcast. Travel is my passion, my obsession, my way of life. And since I adore these life-altering experiences, it has become my personal mission to help others achieve their own bucket list of memories. From eco-lodges and whitewater rafting in Costa Rica to laid-back all-inclusives in Mexico and the Caribbean, from our great national parks in the United States, as well as genteel British castles and river cruising on the Rhine. My goal is to make every individual's travel wish come true. With over 25 years of experience in the travel industry, I look forward to sharing my travel experiences with you to help you with your future travel destinations. Are you ready for traveling through the Middle Ages? Find out more about my Traveling Through the Middle Ages podcast at travelswithtracy.com.